this brings us to a great and awesome difference between the way the Jewish people look at the world and the way that the secular world looks at itself. And I'm going to try to spell it out. And I'm going to tell you a very sort of a personal story. I'm hoping it doesn't rub you the wrong way, but I like to be like really very upfront. And, those who have been on my trip, Lexi, can tell you I don't pull my punches. So, we say things the way they are. And, and I hope I give you the benefit of the doubt that intellectually you'll at least hear where I'm coming from, okay? So we had an incident on one of our trips years ago. We had a number of madrichim and madrichot, which we do on our trips, and some of the madrichim and madrichot were married, newlyweds. So it was a very unique situation. I love when I meet a male who has a lot of energy and is able to really deliver as a madrich, and he marries a soulmate who is also a powerhouse. So they become a power couple, and those are the ones that end up in Vanderbilt and hopefully one day, or end up in UCLA or end up in wherever, and they change the world because they're really in sync with each other. They're a team. And that trip, I had a lot of these either young single guys as madrichim or newlywed couples. And it's near the beginning of the trip. We go to Tzfat, and then after Tzfat that Sunday, we end up doing something, and then we go to a winery. So anyway, sometimes we go on a beautiful hike, and sometimes we would go kayaking. I'm sure if any of you have gone kayaking in Israel, it's not quite kayaking. It's sort of a very tame little river, and it's got that one little bump where you hold on. It's just very relaxing, honestly, unless you throw each other in the water, and then it becomes relaxing and also a little bit crazy. And I had an epiphany that trip, and I just decided to sort of put my neck out on the line. And I got up on the bus and I said the following: a lot of times when there's an event like this, like kayaking, so people get in their swimsuits, and sometimes it's not a religious crowd, and sometimes you'll have people who really wear things that are quite sparse. And I made an announcement on the bus, and the announcement went as follows. You can tell me whether you agree or disagree with this announcement. But I said like this. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. This is a free trip. We're very open-minded. However, there are a lot of young couples and young guys. They are religious, and they probably won't want to join if everyone really strips out, because these are the same people who don't go to mixed beaches, and they wouldn't want to go on a kayak or kayaking where everyone is in a two-piece. They just wouldn't want. So you could decide on the bus whether if it's worth putting on like an overshirt or something, just so the madrichim don't feel uncomfortable. Now, personally, I don't even go on it, so it wasn't for me. I meet them on the other end, but I knew. Speaking to the madrichim, they were asked, what should I do, Rabbi? So I ended up making this announcement a few trips. And the truth is, almost every time, I felt bold, like, oh, Rabbi, you're telling us what to do. And almost every time, everyone was more than happy to, put on like an overshirt or something, because they wanted the madrichim to come, because it's funner when the trip leaders are there. One of the times, one of the young ladies on our trip had a issue with that statement. And she came over to me afterwards and she said, Rabbi, why is it our fault if if people get turned on, right? They should watch their eyes. We should be able to dress however we want. I said, I agree. She said, you do? So why did you make that announcement? So I explained something that is incredibly profound. I think it's profound, and it's a game changer in understanding Judaism. And here's how it goes. I have a house, and I have a backyard. And behind our house, before the fire, of course, behind our house is another house, the backyard. And there is a shortcut that you could take through my backyard to get to the block behind me. What do you think? In American law, do I have the right to say, I don't want you walking on my property? What do you think, Hannah? I could say, don't walk on my property? Right? It's my property. Don't walk. I just planted new grass, and I don't want you to step on my grass. And what happens is, in America, the way that we are protected is through a concept called rights. That's what we have, the Bill of Rights. I have rights. I have the right to congregate. I have freedom of the press. I can say what I want as long as, it's not, if I'm slandering, so then I could be taken to court and be sued for slander, whatever it is. But in general, I have rights. And I have the right that no one should walk in my property, and you have the right that no one should walk through your property. And that's how it goes. In Judaism, we don't have rights. It's a very interesting concept. We don't have rights. It doesn't work like that. Judaism works with a concept called responsibilities. Now, the upshot is the same, meaning in American law, I have the right to my private property. You shouldn't walk on my property. I have the right. In Jewish law, I, as the walker, have responsibility not to trample through your yard. So what's protecting? The rights versus the responsibility. Now, the upshot is the same. No one's going to walk through your yard. But in American law, no one's walking because I have the right not to be trespassed. And in Jewish law, I have a responsibility not to trespass. What do you think is the difference between the two, the underlying soul of the difference between these two? So I'll tell you what it is. When I have rights, then it's really every man and every woman for themselves. I have rights. So I live in my bubble, you live in your bubble, and we all have rights. We're protected with a cocoon of rights. And as long as I am within my rights, I can do what I want. In Judaism, rather than create individuals with individual rights, we create this community of responsibility, which creates a very unique dynamic. And let me give you an example of how this dynamic works. I used to live in LA. I was the rabbi in UCLA, and I would drive my kids to Hancock Park. Anyone here from LA? No? Okay. So I would drive my kids to Hancock Park. It's the religious community I lived in on the college campus. And I would drive them down Beverly Boulevard. And Beverly Boulevard, there's this one intersection, which is a crazy intersection. There's the Hard Rock Cafe, the very famous one right at the corner there. And there are 8 streets that intersect. So it's not just like this, but it's 8 streets. So you've got red light, green light. So you have to wait your turn for the green light, and it's a long light. It's like a 5-minute light till all the lights give a different right of way, okay? So advertisers have taken advantage of you having nothing to do, sitting there for 5 minutes, and they put up ginormous billboards right behind the light that you cannot not see. If you're looking up at the light, you're gonna see the billboard. And this is LA, and every one of those billboards are incredibly provocative. Airbrushed models, Victoria's Secrets, you name it, humongous. So my lovely children, when I would drive, we had a little thing. I would put my eyes down, And my daughter would say, okay, Tati, the light is green. Then I would just pick up enough to be able to go. This way I wouldn't be staring at an 80-foot model. Now, here's a story. There's a guy, and he's at this Beverly Boulevard crossing. And as it happens, he is in a marriage which he's not so happy with. His wife maybe had a few kids. He doesn't feel so attracted to her. She's become more moody. He's thinking of excuses of going away from home. And even in his mind, he's thinking thoughts he shouldn't be thinking, right? He's thinking of infidelity. But I couldn't do it to the kids. But it's somewhere. It's already crept into his mind. And he had a really tough morning that morning. And as he's driving, he's like at the edge. He's on the bubble. And he gets stopped. The light turns red right when he gets there. And he spends 5 minutes looking at an impossibly beautiful lady, thinking, what do I have at home? And look at what I could be having. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And he went out and did something that he later regretted because his wife found out. His wife asked for a divorce. The kids are now part of a broken marriage. And it was the billboards that pushed it over the edge. So I'm curious, like the guy who put up the billboard, I want to have a talk with him. So I look up his number, the little number at the bottom, look up his number, and I, track down the guy who is in charge of putting up the billboard. Not so hard. So call the guy. I said, I got to tell you a story. You put up this billboard. It was incredibly provocative. You know that there are many people who are in marriages that may be not doing so well. And the last thing they need is for somebody to dangle bait in front of them to do something in the heat of passion that's going to destroy lives. I said, how could you do that? I said, in Judaism, we actually have a law. It's called, don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Putting up a big billboard like that is a big, fat stumbling block. People who want to be, want to have their minds in the right place. And you just put it up. And he says back to me, I have the right to do whatever I want. And boom, it just, bam, that was it. There you go. Yeah, you do have the right. And in a world of rights, there are a lot of wrongs that happen, all in the name of rights. I have the right to free speech, so I'll make up fake stuff online. I'll say COVID is bogus or it's not real, and then I'll go and I'll get somebody sick, and then I'll kill them. Right? I have the right. Yeah, you have the right, but it doesn't mean you're not going to kill somebody. It doesn't mean you're not going to kill a marriage. Responsibilities say, even if I have the right to put up whatever I want online, on a billboard, out there in the public, but I have a responsibility not to put a stumbling block. That's huge. And it became glaring to me what the difference was between rights and responsibilities. So I told this young lady on the trip, I said, it's true. You have the right to dress however you want. However, Judaism works with responsibilities. And there's a number of madrichim on the trip who are married 2 months. And we have 25 or so young ladies on the trip. And if they all get dressed like that, how do you think his wife is going to feel if he were to go on the boat? You have the right, but Judaism goes a step further. We say, but maybe you're responsible not to be too provocative in front of a newlywed couple. I want to tell you, my daughter, I have a daughter, she's a cutie. She was under 10 years old at this time. And my wife drove her to a concert. And it was like one of these concerts in towns, whatever. And my wife said, we're picking up another young lady who's going to come to the concert with us. Just, you should know her mother passed away. So we're going to be nice to her, and she's going to come with us. So my wife picked her up and she came in the car, and she was there. She spent the whole evening with my wife and my daughter. And then they dropped her off. And right after they dropped her off, my daughter, who was 10 years old then, she goes, ah. And my wife says, what was that? Why did you sigh? She said, it was hard for me tonight. My wife said, what was hard? She said, it was hard for me because there were so many times I wanted to ask you something. I wanted to call you, but I didn't want to say mommy because I was afraid every time I would say it, I would remind her that she didn't have a mommy, and then she would feel sad. So every time I wanted to say something, I kept quiet because I didn't have a way of calling you, so I wouldn't make her feel bad. It's the difference between rights and responsibilities. I could call you mom. You are my mom. I have a responsibility not to make you feel bad. I have a responsibility not to spread lashon hara, even if it's true. So that's going to be my talk. I know I'm a little bit over, but that's my concept. This idea of rights versus responsibilities. Now, the truth is, of course, we do have rights within Judaism. I'm being a little bit facetious. We have what's called Tznius. We have individuality, and that really does come into play. Really, what we have is not only rights, but also responsibilities. And the responsibilities is what makes us Am Yisrael Chai. It's what makes us a living and breathing organism, a nation that transcends space and time.